Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my monthly wrap up, what I read in January, and we'll talk a little bit about my February TBR as well at the end. I also don't typically set myself like a monthly TBR that I stick to. I kind of just read whatever. I do have my yearly TBR if you want to see that video. Anyway, I'm already getting sidetracked and we're like 2 seconds into this, but I read 8 books in the month of January, which is such a good reading month for me. I normally read, I don't know, 4 to 5 books a month. At least last year that was what I was reading. Except, you know, randomly have these really good reading months, so January was a really good reading month for me. I'm wondering if it has something to do with the new year or just the fact that I had, you know, not a ton going on in the month of January. I did read 8 books and we're gonna get to those. I will say I am in the middle of 2 books right now and I'm pretty close to finishing one of them, which we'll talk about one of them as I talk about the whole series. So I do feel like this number is gonna end up being 9 books instead of 8, but it's fine because I still have a couple days left in the month of January. So I'm hoping to at least finish one of those. I'm literally pulling up my Goodreads app to pull up the books that I've read so we can chat about them. First book I read in 2024 was actually Hollow City. I always forget how you pronounce her name, but it's part of the Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children series. I always forget how to pronounce it, so I'm sorry if that's gonna bother you. But I actually read the first 2 books in the series and then I started the 3rd one. I'm accidentally reading it a little bit out of order. I read the 2nd one and then went back and reread the 1st one and then started reading the 3rd one. And I feel like that's important to note, but let's talk about them each individually and then kind of wrap it up as a series. I think there's 4 or 5 books. So I read the 2nd one, first book of the year. I rated that a 3-star, and I feel like that's partly my fault because like I said, I went back and reread the 1st one because when I was reading the 2nd one, I realized there was a lot in that book that I forgot because I hadn't read the 1st one. I don't know, I read it like a year before the movie came out. So it's been a long time because that movie's been out for a while. So I fully like forgot what it was about. And since I don't want to spoil anything in the series, I'm only going to talk about what the first book is about. So the first book is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and that one I rated a 3-star as well. I didn't love going back and rereading it. I wish I had just read like a spoilers version or watched the spoilers version on YouTube or something like that because I didn't feel like I really needed to go back and reread the 1st one after having read the 2nd one. So I feel like, again, that's probably why my rating's a little bit lower. Not that a 3-star is bad, it just didn't wow me. But this is kind of like a fantasy world where there are children that have like special abilities. So we have someone that's fully invisible, we have a girl that can like shoot fire out of her hands. It's a bunch of different things like that, but it's very dangerous to be a peculiar. So they created time loops for the peculiar children to live in. We follow what happens to them in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd book because I will touch on the 3rd book just a tiny bit here. I'm like 70% of the way through the 3rd book right now. This is the Library of Souls. If I were to rate it right now, I would give it a 3-star, and that's because I just simply can't get into this book. I don't know what it is about the 3rd one. I think maybe I'm just not in the mood to read a book like this, but I just cannot get into it. I actually started like reading it on my iPad, and then at about the 40% mark I switched to the audiobook simply because I just couldn't get into it. I kind of feel like that's just user error. I should have waited until I was more in the mood to read a book like this. I had started it and I wanted to finish it, especially because I borrowed this book from the library, so I had 2 weeks to finish it. I just couldn't get into it, so I think I'm gonna give that one a 3-star. I'll let you know. So far the series was a 3-star series and I think I might end at the 3rd book. I don't think I'm gonna keep going, but we'll see how I'm feeling towards the end of this book. I also feel like these books I would have loved so much in middle school, like around that age range, because I did read the 1st book pretty young. I think I was in middle school, can't remember. I loved the 1st one and I was so excited for the movie to come out. I like vividly remember sitting in my room reading the 1st book like up super late at night, but it's also making me want to rewatch the movie, so we'll see. I also read a couple books this month for videos. So the first one I'm going to talk about is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and then I did also listen to the audiobook of It Starts With Us. I don't know why I put myself through listening to the audiobook of It Starts With Us when I did not like It Ends With Us. I'm not going to go into like too much detail because there are some trigger warnings in this book, but it's basically about a girl. It's girl meets guy. That's literally what I was about to say. It's about a girl and this guy that she meets. Oh my gosh. Literally repeats myself. Anyways, so you follow them and then there's the trigger warning parts that happen. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to trigger anyone. I gave this a 1-star. I was gonna just not rate it, but then as I sat with it, I ended up feeling some really strong feelings towards this book and like obviously not good feelings, but I just think that this book is very problematic in the fact that Colleen Hoover refuses to put out trigger warnings in the beginning of her book because she doesn't want to spoil the plot twist, and and like things like that just kind of make me like tilt my head and scratch, you know? That's a big reason why I did end up rating this a 1 star. I just feel like that's really wrong. I don't know. I just feel like you should be considerate of other people and put a trigger warning. And also I feel like this book has been misconstrued a lot because I don't know. I don't even like see it as a romance book because of what happened. And then like I said, I did listen to It Starts With Us. I don't know why I put myself through that, but I was like, I will just listen to the audiobook. It felt wrong not finishing the 2 of them because it's gonna be a movie, but I don't think the second book is in the movie at all. So I did listen to the audiobook. Again, didn't like it. Although it was a lot less problematic than the first book, it felt very like epilogue-y. It almost felt like we could have had the same feelings and experiences in a 1 chapter book instead of like this whole book about them. I just didn't love that either. Also, I should have known that going into it that I wasn't gonna like it because I didn't love her writing and I didn't love the characters, and I'm a big character person. Like if I'm not feeling the characters, it's gonna be hard for me to keep going in the book. This was a big month for audiobooks for me because I've done a lot of driving this month, and I always listen to audiobooks when I'm driving. Not if I have like a short little trip, but you know what I mean. If I'm driving somewhere more than like 20 minutes, honestly, even sometimes 15, depending on the book, I'm gonna listen to an audiobook. So I did listen to Spare by Prince Harry. Why does it still say by Prince Harry on Goodreads when he's not a prince anymore? I don't know. Anyways, whatever. I'm not gonna rate this one because it's a memoir. Some memoirs I rate, some I don't, just kind of depends. This follows, you know, his life as a prince, and there's a lot that goes down, but I didn't have any feelings towards this book. And honestly, I really think that that is because he talks about things in a way that he assumes that you're gonna have heard of it already before, like because of the publicity that surrounds the royal family. And a lot of these things that he's talking about are like things like back in the day. Like he starts out like his whole life, and being pretty young, these are things that I didn't know about. Obviously, like I didn't see any of the publicity, I didn't see the press, I didn't learn British history in school, like things like that. Like I didn't know about a lot of these things that he's talking about, and I do attest most of that to the fact that I'm young and I just didn't see any of the publicity of these things happening like years ago. You know, some of the stuff he talked about, I wasn't even alive at that point, so I feel like you can only really appreciate this book in like those moments if you had already heard about it or like lived through it. And I will say he obviously talks about things that happened in his life that have nothing to do with publicity that like the general public would not have known. And I do think if you're into the royal family, you might really like that. I'm just not into the royal family, so I'm not really sure why I picked up this book, but I thought it'd be really interesting. And it does make me want to watch their documentary on Netflix because he has a documentary with Meghan Markle on Netflix. And I really liked Meghan Markle in Suits, so, but this is the last thing I'm gonna say about it. He did have a ghostwriter, which I don't know if that means the ghostwriter wrote all of it or just wrote parts of it, but when I was listening to it, I could kind of tell that he didn't write all of it, which was disappointing because when I'm reading a memoir, I really want to be able to hear the author's voice in the memoir. So yeah, didn't love it, didn't hate it. Gosh, there's a lot of books like that this month, but we're gonna start turning things around here. The next couple books that I have to talk about I really liked. So, well, actually 1 bad book, and then we're gonna talk about 2 books that I really liked. So this book was also in another video on my channel. It was in Swapping My Screen Time for Reading, and I listened to The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, and I did rate this a 1 star, but I want to say this book was simply not for me. And I could have easily stopped after the first couple of chapters and known that this book was not for me. But to be honest, I don't really know who this book is for, like his target audience, because he opens up the book cursing a lot, like he's just really getting into it, but then he starts talking a lot about himself and like his experiences rather than like being more self-helpy. I felt like he was too much focused on himself rather than the self-help part. He also made a couple comments about women that I talked about in my other video that made me a little bit uncomfortable, and they weren't even like big comments. I don't want to call myself sensitive to that, but at that point the whole Golden Globes thing had just happened, and so I was listening to that right after the whole Golden Globes thing happened, and you know, I was not at a point in my life to be listening to a man talk about a woman in a way that I didn't appreciate. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Didn't love it, but maybe you did, and that's fine. Okay, let's turn these things around. I don't know why I rated so many books bad this month. Like that was like 3 books that I just talked about in a row that I either didn't rate or rated a 1 star. Like that's rough. We're switching it around. Let's talk about some more good books that I liked this month. We're on our last 2. I did read Iron Flame this month, and I'm still in between if I want to rate this a 4.5 or a 5. I don't know, because I can definitely see this series being a 5-star series for me, even though the first 2 books I'm pretty sure I rated 4.5. I didn't rate them a 5-star. This is a series where I will randomly like think about these books, and I don't do that with books. You know, for me, I typically read my book, it's a vibe, I put it down and I don't think about it again. I typically know that it's a 5-star when I get that 5-star feeling and I continue to think about the book long after I put it down. And I'm not going to talk about what Iron Flame is about because it's book number 2 in a series. This is the second book in the Fourth Wing series, which I think is slated to be like 7 books or 6, something around there. It's slated to be a pretty big series, but Fourth Wing is about a girl who is going through the writer's quadrant, and the writers are known for being like super dangerous. A lot of people die, and she's forced to become a writer because of her mom. Her mom kind of like runs the writer school. I don't know if she would be considered like the president of the whole, is it the Imperium? Did I make that up? I don't know if she would be like considered like president or queen of her whole kingdom. I don't know, but she definitely runs the school part, and so her daughter has lived at the school for a long time and she's forced to become a writer even though she had been low-key training to be a scribe her whole life. So she had to make that switch and join this really dangerous quadrant, so you follow her, and it is kind of a romantasy, so you follow her love interest as well, but I didn't think it was too romancy, but you did get some sprinkling in there as well. It was kind of like fantasy with the subplot romance, but like, you know how ACOTAR towards the end, it's a lot of romance and a lot less action? This was more action than romance, which I appreciated, just because that's what I'm looking for when I'm picking up these kind of fantasy, romantic type books. It's mostly fantasy that I'm looking for, but I did really like that one. I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and just call it a 5-star read because it was so good. Even though a lot of people had the opposite experience with Iron Flame, they liked that one less than Fourth Wing. I liked Iron Flame more than Fourth Wing. All right, my last book of the month, I read The Glass Castle by Jeannette. This one I rated a 4-star. I did go ahead and rate it even though it's a memoir because her writing was so beautiful. It was so lyrical, and sometimes I would almost have to like step back and be like, oh, this is a memoir. Like, this stuff actually happened in her life. She didn't make up these stories. Like, it's not a fiction book, it's her life. And I don't know if that's just because she had a lot of crazy stuff happen in her life or if that's just because how she writes, but it was really good. I really recommend this memoir. My sister actually recommended it to me. So she grows up in a very different environment than any memoir that I've ever read. She grows up very poor and her family is just very different, for lack of a better word. I feel like I barely talked about that one, but I honestly don't know what else to say about that one. I don't know, it was so good. And like, I was just so interested in her life, especially because she opens the book talking about a time in her life when she was like 5 years old and she was making hot dogs on the stove and got really bad burns on her whole body. Like, she caught fire, and then you go from there. So she really captivates you from the beginning. Middle of 2 books right now, so future Morgan, let us know if you finished those. But I am reading the 3rd book in the Miss Peregrine series. That one I'm pretty close to finishing, and then I'm also doing my Harry Potter reread, so I'm on the 4th book right now. This will be a reading vlog in February, so I'm not going to say much about this, but hoping to finish this pretty soon. It's taking me a lot longer than I thought it would, mostly just because I can't read during the day, but again, hoping to finish this one pretty soon as well. I'll probably finish it in February though. And now let's get into my TBR for February. I am going to the public library pretty soon, maybe today, maybe in the next couple of days, but I want to pick up some books for February. I do kind of want to read a couple of romances just around the Valentine's Day mark. Like, that would be fun. But I pulled out technically 5 books, but in my head 3 books from my shelves that I really want to read this month. First off, I have Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. This is just a businessy type book. It says how to get your way in business and in life, and I want to read more books like this year, either personal finance or business type books, so I'm excited to get to this one. I'm also feeling an itch for like reading businessy type of text or personal finance type of texts. I just kind of miss that aspect of my college life, so definitely reading that next month. I also really want to read The Lost Man by Jane Harper. I talked about this book a little bit before. I think all of these books are on my 2024 TBR, but this one specifically, Jack read it a while ago and I really want to get to it because I want to talk about it with him. I think that's just so fun. But it's about 2 brothers and they have cattle ranches. Oh, it says 3 brothers, 1 death, no answers. So I think it's probably a mystery. Not sure. I hate reading the backs of books because I don't want to spoil it for myself. And then this series, I'm itching to get to it. I keep staring at it on my dresser and I'm like, I just need to read it. Like I want to pick it up right this second. This is the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy. This is becoming a TV show, I think, as well. I'm not sure if that's scheduled to come out this year or not, but I really want to get to this series and I'm thinking I'll include it in a reading vlog as well because I think that might be fun. But basically this is about a girl who opens up a cold case for her high school project, and I think she figures out who did it. I'm not 100% sure. She's like playing detective and I think that's so fun. So really want to get to these, especially before it starts to get warm outside. I feel like this is a cold time book. And again, like I said, I'm gonna go to the public library here soon, so I'm gonna add more to this TBR as well. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what other videos you want to see from me. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!